Hello everyone, this is iSupreme and welcome back to Blood Debt. After my first video discussing this game blew up, there's been some significant changes to the story and the characters, so I decided to make an update about it. But before we start, if you haven't seen the first video, or you just don't know what Blood Debt is, it's basically just like murder mystery but on crack with some other game modes mixed in. I won't really be talking about the game modes in this video since I already did in the previous one, so with that out the way, let's just jump straight into the updated storyline. Now, before we begin with the lore, let's first fix some things that I forgot to mention in my previous video. The developer behind this game also made another one called Canada Sim, aka Polar Ice Cap Simulator. These two games take place in the same universe, as Blood Debt takes place in the year 1999, and Polar Ice Cap Sim taking place after the events of Blood Debt in the year 2002. If you're curious as to what Polar Ice Cap Sim is, you can think of it as like criminality if it took place in Canada. But with that little correction out the way, let's head into where it all started. We start in the year 1954. A series of national conflicts broke out between the Nubic Union and Germany, which led to the Union gaining control of two German states. These states would integrate with the Nubic Union instead of being used as a satellite state. If you don't know what a satellite state is, it's basically a smaller country that was formerly independent, but then there's a bigger, powerful country, like a big brother, who tells it what to do. Later on, Germany decides to join forces with the NATO after sensing a looming threat. Skipping ahead a couple of years, on July 18th of 1972, we go to the Nubic Union, where the this word right here. That power plant resides in the Nubic Union. They finished installing their fourth nuclear reactor within the plant. At first, everything was smooth sailing, until somehow the nuclear reactor, without warning, exploded, causing thousands of casualties within the Nubic Union. It went down in history as one of the second most severe nuclear-related accidents, with the death count reaching shocking numbers and the casualties costing millions to repair. After that little incident, we moved to the year 1980, where a couple of Nubic soldiers that were stationed within the German states killed numerous families over stolen goods during a minor famine. If you don't know what famine means, it's just a fancier word for saying they were fucking hungry. This event would spiral into an uprising that escalates into a revolution led by the two German states. Between 1980 to 1982, the reintegration war was led by said German states to fight the Nubic Union. They successfully pushed the Nubic infantry away from their borders and would move back with Germany. Then, between 1986 to 1988, a NATO representative was assassinated that sparked conflict between NATO partner countries and the Middle Eastern nations. The NATO spread their influence through more territory. Meanwhile, tensions were rising with the Nubic Union as they had multiple military and financial partners in the Middle East. Then, in the years of 1993 and 1994, the Middle East were faced with a series of protests ran by anti-NATO and anti-government protesters. These actions were so impactful, it would spark a revolution. They started off in the southernmost parts of Kyrgyzstan due to a killing of a family of 4 caused by the NATO troops. In 1995, following the Kyrgyzstani Spring, multiple rebel groups rose to fight the oppression that the NATO was inducing within their regions. They succeeded with the NATO retreating and abandoning their occupied states. These states would form into Kyrgyzstan and were run by a group of Middle Eastern states and allies within the Nubic Union. Then, in 1997, a conflict would arise after a series of mall bombings took place. It would go on to spark frictions between the Nubic Union and the NATO. The NATO would accuse the Nubic Union to be the ones behind these attacks. This dispute led to many men on both sides being drafted without choice to help with the war. While some men had no problem with fighting, many did not, and it became very clear that the Nubic Union wasn't going to come out as the victor, as the war reached its 1-year mark. Then, out of nowhere, in 1998, what was going to be another loss from the NATO became a miracle, as they were able to turn the fight into their advantage. This would lead to the NATO's eventual loss and dissolution, ceasing to ever exist. Now that we're in the present of the year 1999, the Nubic Union was unsurprisingly defeated by the NATO, and the Union disbanded into their own states with their own economies. This decision, however, put pressure onto the former citizens of the Nubic Union since they were used to the old ways of living. This new change made it very hard for people to live day by day without having to struggle, which in turn forced people to commit crimes and take loans from not so friendly people, leading to people having to spill some innocent blood to pay off their debt. Look, I said the word again. Alright, so now with the timeline of events out of the way, let's dive back into the main killers in Juggernaut mode. Alexi is a 19-year-old kid who has a strange interest in anything that has to do with military and war. He works at a supermarket for most of his days, but during his free time, he'll go through his grandfather's old relics and stuff during his time in the war, from inspecting rifles to reading the old magazines that were about the old leaders at that time. It didn't help that Alexi's father, Andrei Tarasov, was a military contractor who sold illegal weapons through his work and connections that helped grow Alexi's obsession with guns. Things only got worse when, on Alexi's birthday, he was gifted a computer from his father. After this day, his fascination with military stuff spiraled out of control, with him picking up the hobby of hunting for animals. But people around Alexi noticed that this little hobby of his was a little weird, because from the outside looking in, it was almost like as if Alexi was practicing for something instead of just doing it for the sport. Then one day in the high-rise building, a shooting took place that tragically killed his father. Alexi made it out alive, but he wasn't the same. This mental turmoil led him to go out into the streets and start shooting innocent people. After this tragic event, we get a statement from one of his relatives where they say,
"He never talked about anything but guns. He would explain how easy it would be to do something big, like he was discussing the weather. No one took him seriously until he did it."
Ryman was a 33-year-old woman with a passion for writing and literature. Outside of her hobbies, though, she didn't have anything or anyone else in her life. Most of her days were spent alone, until one day she went to a bar and met Sergei, a handsome lad in his 30s who most people know him as a playboy who flirts with women inside or outside of his workplace at the high-rise communications building. Anyways, they decided to hook up that night, which was the only time Ryman actually had someone to love. This was Sergei's biggest mistake because after that one night stand, she would constantly send him letters asking to meet up again. Curious about his whereabouts, she stumbles upon Sergei flirting with another girl and she instantly broke down. After that day, she would isolate herself in her apartment, rarely ever coming out. The pain of this loss would be so bad that on the 28th of December, 1998, Ryman would go on to breaking into Sergei's workplace with an illegally modified weapon and killing 3 people and injuring 7 before getting shot down by officers. One of those kills was Sergei himself, where they found him laid down with 38 gunshot wounds, laying next to 2 other people who died. Those 2 people in question were Erin Vatsivila, Sergei's girlfriend at the time, and Grigory Orlov, an ex-Bratva enforcer trying to turn a new leaf. Also, sorry if I really butchered those names. After this tragic accident, we get a statement from one of the officers at the scene.
"We found her apartment room full of empty bottles and old love letters. The girl never moved on. She just sat there, rotting, until one day, she finally snapped."
While investigating Ryman's home, they found multiple pieces of romantic and threatening literature she wrote before her demise. All of her pieces would be made available to the public at the New Ezekiel City Library, where each book and individual page would be encased in a lockbox to avoid any tampering or damage. Last but not least is Vadimir Kolstov, a 45-year-old unemployed man who wants to live in the glory days. Before he would go insane, he was just a normal man living with his relatives. Vadimir loved helping them out any way he could, but when the Nubik Neto War started, he wouldn't stop talking about it and the politics surrounding the war. According to his relatives, every time they would sit down for dinner, he always had something to say about the state of the world and the countries and anything else similar. When the conflict of the war died down in '99, he would put the blame with the people in power, and his anger was spiraling out of control. This would all come crashing down when one day, Vadimir spotted a private party happening in the high-rise building, and would go on to shoot up the building as an act of symbolism. During the aftermath, we get a statement from one of his relatives, where they say,
"Washed-up communist wannabe. He always ranted about the glory days, like he was living in another era. At work, no one took him seriously. At home, he had no one. Just him and his new big posters, relics, and anger."
Now with an updated lore to the game, I'll be discussing more events in Blood Debt, like the 2 canon events in Debt mode and the lore behind the gangs in Team War mode, but that's a story for another video. If you enjoyed this one and want to see the next iteration of the story, make sure to like this video and subscribe to know when I make the next update. Before I end things off, I just want to say thank you to all the love and support from the last video. especially with the corrections y'all left me in the comments. That really helped me a lot. Though I doubt I got everything. If you know something I missed or messed something up, just let me know in the comments below. But that's all for now, and I'll see y'all in the next one.